Welcome to Empowered, Mind-Body Inspiration. The mind is the map to wholeness, wellness, health. The heart is the key to genius and inspiration. Join me and my guests as we explore how to release and rewire into who you truly are, unique, whole, and empowered. Please like, share, and subscribe. Spiral up, spiral out. Welcome, everyone. Today we have Richard Taylor, co-author of A Stress-Free You. Richard worked in a fast-paced advertising business for 40 years and discovered he was using stress for his motivation. While effective at helping make the next deadline, it can have adverse effects. He has discovered how to live 100% stress-free life and is going to share some powerful information. What are our stress switches? The things that we have allowed to usher stress into our lives. Identify them and turn them off. Great tips and powerful tools. Let's see how this spirals out. Welcome, Richard.
Hey, Jane, thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Really excited. So tell us how you became stress-free. What's your story, the back end?
Well, you can't become stress-free unless you've already been stressed.
Right?
Well, no, I should say that you can, but I didn't. I took the hard road. I've been in the advertising world for over 40 years, and the first thing you find out in the advertising world is you're working for a deadline. And of course, first of all, the word deadline is not a good term because you think about it, the first word is dead, and that's not good. And then so you're always making that next deadline. And when I was younger, I was so gung-ho. I used to do whatever I could to make that deadline. And that's great for the customer. And you still should please the customer, but not at the cost of you being under stress. And stress is a great motivation. Like if there is a tornado coming down the street and you need to run to shelter, you're not thinking about this, that, the other thing. You're just getting to safety. But when you're in the business world or the relationship world or any kind of interaction with anybody, being under stress will get the job done, but won't get it done well. And it won't get it done with your health being intact. There's a lot of heavy prices to pay for your health when you go through stress. And from compromised immune systems to bad relationships, to getting fired, to having all kinds of psychological and emotional issues and spiritual issues too. Yeah. So that's where I did it wrong for a long time. And that's when I finally, the light bulb went off and bing, I'm not doing this anymore. If I'm doing it wrong, there's got to be a right way.
Yeah. So for you, it was just a decision to change.
It was more than a decision because I've been in the self-help industry for many years. And we used to put on the biggest motivational seminars you can imagine. We had 40,000, 50,000 people in multiple venues across a city sometimes. We had the biggest, most famous speakers, former presidents of the United States. We've had 6 of them, world leaders, sports celebrities, everybody you can almost imagine, Hollywood legends. And we fill these arenas, pump them up full of motivation, and these people would leave. And it dawned on me one day, I was walking in my office saying well, if all these people are getting all this great information, why doesn't 100% of the people change, do things the right way? And I'm like, there's got to be a reason why people don't lose weight or quit this or stop doing this or should exercise when they don't exercise. And the light bulb went off it's because of stress. It's not because people don't know how to budget their money. Like a 6-year-old with an allowance knows how to budget their money. Do they really need a 12-week course on how to handle their finances? Well, maybe because they've messed them up so much or they have credit card debt. But the reality is a 6-year-old that gets $2 a week can figure out a budget. It's not information. It's stress. What happens is when we go to do something, we have our intentions set right. And all of a sudden we get stressed out and we go to our go-to, which is something unhealthy, either eating unhealthy, spending the wrong way, or a bad habit or something like that. And that's the rules because everyone's so stressed out. Yeah. So that's the whole genesis of it. It's not that we don't know enough. It's just that the stress derails us because you have good intentions, you go to work, everything's going good. The boss yells at you, you're at the snack machine, and now you're off your diet or whatever you want to do. Yeah. So stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're so easily derailed in this society because there's so many things that immediately stress us or trigger us in a way, right?
And not only are we so easily derailed, but since birds of a feather, since everyone around us, except you and me and a few other people and all your listeners probably, are stressed out. So like it just naturally, we're all supposed to be that way. Well, no. And you said also, as far as the triggers go, well, the symptoms, the quick fixes for the triggers are all over the place. I mean, when I grew up, because I've been around a while, there was no fast food. There was no drive-through. Went to a drive-in movie. That was the only thing we drove through. That was it. There were no drive-through fast food. You couldn't whip out a phone and order something online, have it brought to your house or your apartment, or you couldn't buy something online. There was no online. The only thing we had clotheslines that clothes were hanging on. That was it. So this instant gratification is easily fed with an instant surge of, dopamine to get my quick fix of getting something. And as far as the triggers go, oh my gosh, yeah. And in our book, we come up with these things. They're not triggers. We call them stress switches, because a stress switch is something that is a person, place, or thing that causes you stress. Well, it's the good news because you can turn them off once you know what they are.
Right. I find now with awareness, I know when I've been triggered and I'm going into stress, and you can kind of talk yourself through it. Sometimes you indulge for an hour or so. But yeah, it's important to at least recognize that you've gone there.
Well, I think the indulgent part is okay if it's done in a healthy way. If you've had a tough day at work and you come home and you clean out a drawer, or you organize your closet, or you go for a run, or you eat a really healthy, hearty dinner or something like that. That's indulging yourself in a way. And if for dessert, if you want to have a nice dessert for dessert because you had a tough day, fine. If you've eaten a healthy meal to start with, it's kind of like how our parents are. You can't get dessert unless you eat your whole dinner. You know what I mean? But there's a lot of reasoning behind that, because you just don't want to go home and binge out on something unhealthy, because then you've just sunk yourself lower, and then you feel guilty, and then you stress yourself all the more. But awareness is a big key to it. I give you credit for talking about that, because a lot of people aren't aware of it. They just aren't. They just think that's normal. I mean, I have some people I know, their life is chaos, and they just think that that's normal. I've had people say to me, Rich, I don't understand why you don't drink alcohol. How come you don't drink alcohol? I'm like, I don't. I haven't had one in, 30 years or something like that. And I'm not knocking drinking alcohol, but they abuse it. That's how they handle their stress. So again, I'm not knocking it. If people do that, that's up to their. But for me, I don't need it. It's not what I need.
Yeah,
Yeah. But awareness is key.
it is. And it's interesting. We've almost been taught that in order to exceed, we need to live in that paradigm, which would include go, 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 stress, have you done enough today? Have you done this perfectly, and all of that. So it's almost a survival mechanism.
It's a double survival mechanism. I mean, that's what you're saying is right. It's a first survival mechanism is you have to be like everyone else. You can't go in and say like, well, this is all I'm doing today. Anything more is stressing me out. You probably find that someone will be out of a job pretty soon. You're supposed to charge. And the other part of it is, the opposite is if you're in a constant state of stress, you're actually in survival mode. You're in fight, flight, or freeze. And fight means that you're threatened, not physically threatened. Like if you're out running in your neighborhood, you're totally relaxed. You come around the corner, there's a mean dog gnarling at you. Well, your body automatically switches into fight, flight, or freeze response. It's part of our autonomic nervous system. It's autonomic because it automatically happens. You don't have time to think about it. It just happens. And a lot of things change in our body, gets flooded with stress hormones and stuff like that. But you're either going to fight it, you're going to run away from it, or you're going to freeze to pretend that you're not alive so that it doesn't think you as dinner. And that can manifest in a lot of different ways when you're not being faced by physical danger. I'll give you an example. And this didn't dawn on me until just a few years ago. When I was growing up in school, in grammar school and junior high school and high school, I was a terrible student. I was a creative person. I became an artist in life. I mean, I didn't understand algebra, geometry, all that stuff. I mean, it was like so foreign to me. And every time I'd be faced with learning it, I would freeze. I would literally freeze. And I was like, what's wrong with me? I don't freeze when I do other stuff, but like literally I could feel my brain literally shut down and freeze. And it was like I just drank 8 big Slurpees, and the whole brain freeze type thing. But it was a mental thing. And I was like, there's gotta be something wrong with me. Now I know what it was, because when I was faced with something I didn't understand, my brain would freeze. It was stress. Yeah.
Yeah, and the frontal cortex completely
Yep.
shuts down. I
Yep.
didn't know that either as a kid. And to this day, if somebody puts me on the spot with a very difficult question, my brain will freeze. I can't remember their name or anything. And now I know to laugh at it because laughter helps reduce the stress.
Oh,
But
absolutely. Yeah.
right, like it's crazy what happens. And then there's this flood of hormones and
Yeah. And what happens is scientifically, the front part of the brain, prefrontal cortex, like that, that's the rational thinking or emotions and stuff like that. But when we're in that stress response, there's a part of our brain called the amygdala, which literally hijacks the rational part of the brain. There's a switch. It just flicks a switch automatically. We have no control over it. And the amygdala takes over. Well, the amygdala is great for getting you out of danger, but it's not good for getting things done. It's not good for relationships and stuff like that. So yeah, it's
we're writing an exam, right? If you
oh
can't
no, no,
think.
you no.
Yeah.
And you're right. I mean, there's been times in my life where I just frozen up. I'm like, why is that? And it's not that you have a problem. You're just under stress. It's a stress response. Yeah.
So, what are some of the triggers? What do you teach people how to start recognizing this?
Well, we say most of the triggers, or we call them stress switches, or they're hidden in plain sight. They're doing them and they think they're normal, but they're really not. And our number one stress switch in our book is called news blackout. Don't consume the news in any fashion. The news is toxic. We call it intellectual pornography. It's terrible. I mean, first of all, it's all bad news. Even before they got into, uh, picking sides and basically becoming propaganda uh, outlets for one political party or the other, it was always just bad news. Now it's just worse. And I'm old enough to remember before they had 24-hour news, the nightly news was 30 minutes a night. And of that, after commercials, maybe 18 minutes was the news, national news, world news. Well, that's all there is. But when they went 24 hours, you're like, how do we keep people engaged for 24 hours when there's only 18 minutes of content? So they bring in the people yelling and screaming at each other. They start selling it as they start picking sides. Because so now if we can keep people enraged, then they're engaged. Engagement comes from enragement. And so these, talk show hosts or talking heads or newscasters, it's all designed to keep you enraged so that you keep watching it. And my wife and I fell into this. We had the big screen TV and it was on we used to have it, wake up in the morning, we put it on and it was a 40-inch screen TV and it's negative news, negative news, negative news, anger, people yelling and screaming at each other. And I'm not taking sides. Both sides do it. Liberals, conservatives, whatever, they both do it. So one might have more than the other at one time or another, but it's all toxic. And our kids, when they're growing up, we're soaking this in. We are concerned in society about secondhand smoke from smoking. Well, there's a thing called secondhand stress. It's probably just as dangerous or even more dangerous. Kids are absorbing all this stuff. And then the parents see something, they go, that person's a blankety blank, 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 and this stuff like that. So now they're being taught at an early age, instead of living in a home with love, joy, and peace, it's all anger, frustration, and rage and hype. Yeah. So don't watch the news in any fashion. Yeah. Not on my phone, I don't have any news apps on my phone. I don't watch television anyway, but if you do, don't watch the news. Watch something pleasant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I totally agree.
So that's one that people think is normal, which is really toxic. So that's one of our stress switches. Another one we call seventh haven. And that means basically you need to give yourself at least 12 hours of a break from work, from 7 in the morning to 7 at night, or whatever your 12-hour stint is. You should have nothing to do at work. You shouldn't be answering emails, checking text messages, talking to your boss or people you work with. Nothing. You need that break. That's for your rest time, and that's for your family time, or just relaxation time. You can't be on all the time. It really should be 8 hours. But with the way we live in this day, we say no more than 12. So yeah, it's called seventh haven. You need a haven time to just be in rest, digest, restore. That's the opposite of fight, flight, or freeze, is rest, digest, and restore. And who doesn't want to do that? I mean, think about it. Rest, digest, and restore. And that's why people have so many digestive issues. They're stressed out. And when they eat when they're stressed out, which is not good. But when you're stressed out, all the blood supply leaves your uh, digestive tract. So now you're going to have even more problems. You're not going to absorb the food, which can lead to all kinds of other problems. Yeah.
Right? Like acid reflux and
Yeah.
digestive issues.
Or eating
Yeah.
too fast. And look, that was me. I used to brag to people. This is how dumb I got it. I used to brag to people that I worked through lunch. I was so gung ho, I would almost never take lunch. I'd just be at my desk and I'd work through lunch. I did it so much that I was at one job. And when I went to leave, they actually found this lunch bag. There was just a regular kind of like lunch bag with a loop on it. And on the bag, it said feed bag, like animals that have a feed bag hooked to me. And they say, yeah, you should use this, Rich, because that's your feedback, because you never leave work. You just keep working. You never leave your desk. You just keep working. I'm like, that's not a good indictment. I'm like, oh, that's bad. But that's how gung ho I was. And I got it wrong. I mean, it's just eating and work is like, fire and gasoline. They don't go well together. you know?
No, well, right. And I mean, a monk or someone spiritual tell you to do nothing but eat, enjoy the food, enjoy where
Yeah.
you are, think about that, taste it, smell it. That should be everything that you're doing in that moment. But
Absolutely. Yeah. And it shouldn't be at your desk while you're waiting, watching emails come, flying in with more work, more stress, or people or answering the phone and you're working. Go out to a park. I mean, how often do people, they drive by parks all the time? How often do people go into a park? I mean, as long as it's
mhm.
safe. Almost every city, even tiny cities, have public parks, and they're designed not just to look at. You're supposed to like walk in them or go sit on the bench or just go see kids, watch kids play. When kids are playing, they're not stressed out. They leave it all out. I mean, they're yelling and screaming with getting all that energy out of them. They're not stressed out. And yet adults sit there all, looking at their phone. Oh man, I only got 3 likes on this post on Facebook. And now it stretches out all the more. It's like, don't put your phone down. Just look at nature,
Yeah.
breathe, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My husband and I have a joke, when things aren't perfect, we'll say, well, where's the bus? There's not going to be anyone here to notice. So we might as well not worry about it right now until we have time. Right.
Good point. Yeah.
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 But yeah, so many times we think we don't even have the time to go sit in the park. But the truth is, if we don't take that time, we'll lose time in the end, right? Like our health is going to take a hit.
Oh, good example. My dad, when I graduated art school and I came back and I was living in my parents' house before I got my own place. So I think I was in my early 20s. And my dad had taken this job he worked for a large life insurance company. And he took a job working in one of the offices because he wanted to move back to Connecticut. So he went from the main office to a small like sales office. And this office was a mess. It was like rated number 450th in the country as far as sales. My dad's a professional. He doesn't do anything half-assed. He does it all the way. And he was a straight A student. He was in the Navy in World War II. Awesome guy. And just really strong character and really a positive person too. So, but he would go there and he was telling me all these stories of how there are all these things out of his control. Like his agents would write a policy that would be like a really big life insurance policy, which would be a great commission for the agent, and my dad being the manager would get a part of the commission too. And his best agent would write this thing, and it was really big. And they'd send it up to the regional office to process, and this is how they did it back in the day. And the regional office would lose it, and then my dad would have to tell his top salesperson that they lost the thing, and then he had to tell the customer that, and the customer would get all upset and go with somebody else. That's stress. That's stress. You have no control over that. It's not in your control. And that's one of the other versions of stress, is being in a situation you have no control over. So yeah, and it was that and all that other stuff. So within 2 years, my dad turned that agency into like number 14 or 15 in the country. He turned it around. He did a phenomenal job. But Jayne, every day he kept coming home saying, it's a lot of stress, and I'm doing a job of a much younger man. He was in his early 50s when he was doing this. He said, if I was in my 20s, I could handle this. But in my age, in my 50s, this is very stressful for me. And within 3 or 4 months after he said that, he came down with a very serious form of cancer. And he almost died. Thank God he got into Sloan Kettering in New York, and they did massive surgeries and a year of horrendous chemotherapy. And he lived to the age of 93. And thank God for that. But what he went through was not worth it, not worth all the air quotes success he had to do. So you're not number 14. Maybe you're number 150.
Yeah.
There's nobody, I don't think anyone has ever left this planet and said, on their last final moments said, I wish I'd made more money. It's like, I don't think that's of any value at that point. And yes, you need money to live and stuff. But money doesn't buy happiness, and it's true. It doesn't. And you can't buy things that money doesn't buy. Like love, joy, peace, and sound mind does not come with money. It may be ruined by the pursuit of money. Yeah.
So true. You cannot take that extra pair of shoes.
Yeah. Or someone once said, you never saw a hearse pulling a U-Haul.
Right. Yeah. And we just don't think about it nearly enough. So,
yeah.
So what do you tell, you were saying you can't, probably you would get fired if you had done your 2 tasks and then you're like, oh, that's it for the day. I can't do any more. It would stress me. What advice do you have to give to people that there are a lot of things in the day and they need to get them done in order to achieve, but what kind of mindset would be a better way to be thinking?
Well, I think there's 2 parts to that. Obviously, I'm not talking about someone being a slacker. I'm talking about someone who, like, if this is what your responsibility is, part of the day, you do your responsibility. They hired you and they told you what your responsibility is. You can't say like, no, I'm only doing half of that. Now, if they're totally unreasonable, that's a different story. But, you decide to take that job, and they're paying you. So you have to do what they tell you within reason, as long as it's like legal and not abusive and not totally unreasonable. And you need to do it with excellence and give them 100% or 110%. That's all great. I mean, I still do that with all my clients. But what I'm talking about is, I give an example. Early on in my career, I worked for a cable television magazine. It was a startup. And everyone knows that a startup is a startup. You're going to do the long hours. You're going to do, you're going to work maybe not for as much money because they're starting on money that's not profit. That's expected. So I started working there as an associate art director, and my boss, Carol, was the art director who had hired me at my very first job when I got out of art school. Wonderful person, very talented art director. And so we were there like till 11 o'clock at night, and we come back at like 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning. And we did that 6 days a week. But the problem was, Jayne, was that I realized that we were sitting around waiting for stuff from the editorial department a lot. And they'd bring an article in at like 10:30 at night, and then we're supposed to work on it. And after doing that for like a month, I said to Carol, this is nuts. This is dumb. Why are we doing this? I'm leaving at 5. I mean, I'm going to come in at 9 or 8:30, whatever it was, and I'm going to work like a banshee. I'll even work through lunch, even back then. But I'm leaving at 5. Shh, you are? I said, yeah, I am. And the thing that made it challenging was the boss was kind of a interesting guy. His parents were from Hollywood, and his office, he could see everyone coming and going from the coming into the front door right from his office. He always had his blinds up. So for me to do this, I had to be bold. And he was a very strong personality, the kind of person who would just yell and scream at people like for no reason, literally no reason. Okay. So I just said, yeah. So I told her. And then that day that I told her, I left at 5. And I remember she said that he came the next day. I came in and she goes, Peter came in and asked where you were. And I said, what'd you tell him? He said, well, Rich is going to leave at 5 now. He said, okay. That was it. That was it. He respected me. And, a couple weeks later, he came into me and says, Rich, I know you play tennis, and he could afford it. I've rented some indoor tennis court time. You want to go play, we'll sneak out there and work and we'll play tennis together. I said, sure. So you don't have to be a doormat. You know what I mean? You can stand your ground when your ground is worth standing. You're not doing it just because you have a bad attitude. You're doing it I'm a better employee because I left at 5. I'd be a worse employee if I was working till 11 or 12 every night, 6 days a week instead of 5, being tired. So I set my own boundaries, and it's to the betterment of the company. Yeah. So does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And then to, like you said, get things done quickly, take a break, rejuvenate, and then have the passion to do it, like with a different energy than a stressed energy.
And right. And you'll have creativity. I mean, if you look, when you're at a job, you're there because there's problems. They need problems solved. I mean, it's not just a lot of people, if they're working on a repetitive thing where it's one widget in front of another, but a lot of people, and those are challenges in their own way, but a lot of people have, here, I need you to work on this. I need you to fix these problems or whatever it is. And so you have to have creativity to do that. When you're under stress, the creativity it's the first thing that leaves the room. So now you're even more stressed. I'll give you another example. As a graphic designer for most of my life, there's a section in the magazine that was like a puzzle piece, and it was a certain way you had to design it. And what I would be like, get it at 4. My boss would give it to me at 4:30 in the afternoon, and I start working on it. And I'm already been working all day. I'm tired, and I'm like trying to finish it before I leave for the day, so I could feel that, hey, I got the outline section done. I can't do it. I come in the morning, I look at it and go like, oh, boom, 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 done.
Right.
No stress, no frustration, and done. So what does that tell you? When we're tired and are stressed, we're not good. We're not good for nothing except relaxing, So don't try to do things when you're tired and stressed. I made a mistake once. I wrote a check to pay my rent when I was like 7:30, 8 o'clock at night once. And when I wrote it in my checkbook, I didn't subtract my rent. I added it. So then I'm like, the next couple of days, I'm like, well, I owe this money. I can go spend some stuff. So I bought some stuff. And it was the only check I ever bounced in my life because I added my rent instead of subtracting. I'm like, I can't have, I did. Oh, wow.
Right.
I actually added my, rent's a big thing. It's not like it's $20. It's a lot of money. Yeah. I was very bummed when I found out that not only did I bounce a check, but I didn't have that money.
Right. I call those things speed wobbles.
Yeah, that's good.
So what are some of the other switches?
I like that speed wobbles.
Right. Right. When things just go sideways.
Toxic friends.
Sorry?
Yeah. Does anybody have toxic friends, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Or family members, don't spend as much if you have to spend time with them because of your family, that's one thing. But if they're toxic, they're not, it's, it says in the Bible, evil company corrupts good character. And it says in the Bible, and I'm sure it says it in all different religions and stuff, and all circles of wisdom. Basically, if you hang around people who are not healthy, it's going to make people unhealthy. And it's really common sense, but there are people that, there are friends, and there are people that are not friends. They're there to take advantage of you, not, they're the people that are always calling up and needing this or needing that. And look, if a friend needs someone or someone's going through a difficult time, that's fine. You help them. That's what a friend does. But if it's not constant, and that they're doing it just because they're, my dad said, Rich, in this world, there's givers and takers. There's winners and losers. Hang around the winners and hang around the givers.
Yeah. And you can
Yeah.
feel it inside when you're with someone that's going to be, or even, that they constantly cause conflict. Like you get tight inside.
Oh, right. Yeah.
As soon as you're in their presence. So it's immediate. The stress is immediate.
You can feel your blood pressure rise or temperature rise. And when we were in a stressful situation, like I said, I gave another example. I was at a business meeting once, and it was all the big, I was a vice president of this one company, and all the top dogs are there from our company and the other company we're merging with. And we were there for a day and a half, and it was boring. It was one boring presentation after another. And my boss had told me, Rich, I want you to get up and give like a 15-minute presentation on what you're doing. So I said, sure. And I had thought in my head what I was going to do and all that kind of stuff. So I said, I'm going to start this presentation off with a joke because it's so dry. And my dad had great success. He would get in front of people and tell a joke, and the place would erupt. And after that, he could tell them anything he wanted to because humor is the best medicine. So I got up there and I told the joke, and it bombed. And the reason it bombed was it was a funny joke, but jokes are only funny if the boss laughs. Everyone looked at the boss, and the boss didn't laugh. Okay. Actually, there were two bosses, and both bosses didn't want to laugh to make themselves look, embarrassed. So they both looked at each other, didn't laugh. So then no one else laughed. So then my blood pressure started. I could feel the stress response kicking in. So I had a comeback. Every good comedian's got a comeback. My comeback was, well, I told that joke because I thought we needed a good laugh. It looks like we still do. That was my comeback. Crickets again. And I'm like, oh my God. So then I started doing my presentation. I was like, blah, 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 blah. I was a fumbling idiot. And I think it was like 68 degrees in that room, and immediately felt it was like 95. I was sweating like crazy, and I couldn't wait to get through it. So yeah, being under that kind of pressure, and that's a stress switch, not being prepared, I guess. Yeah. Another one is, here's another one I think a lot of people like is take the weight out of your weight. And what I mean is that is a lot of people will weigh themselves every morning, and that's very stressful. We say, change the name of your bathroom scale from the bathroom scale to your closet scale. Take that bathroom scale and put it in the back of your closet. Okay. Weigh yourself once a year. That's it. Once a year, weigh yourself, not every day. It just stresses people out. Here's the thing. Say you lose a couple of pounds. Great. You feel good. And now you gain a couple of pounds. Now you feel bad. It's like, why should your day be ruined? Or even if you do lose a couple of pounds, what is that? Your body fluctuates. It's part of the body. It's an ecosystem. You know what I mean? It's never going to be 1XX or whatever it is. Just leave it alone. Don't stress yourself out, because now you get stressed out. You're going to eat the unhealthy foods and you'll gain weight. And then you feel bad. You'll step in the scale again. Just once a year,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a crazy one. I used to dance, and I would weigh myself every day. And I forget when I stopped, but I haven't weighed myself in probably 3 years. It went from once a year to, and if you just pay attention to how you feel, you don't need a scale. It just stresses you out.
Your body, everyone has a different type body, and you know what you eat, how it makes you feel. And so why should that little piece of equipment control how you feel for the day?
Yeah.
It should have nothing to do with it. Another one is that your investments, like if people have money in the stock market. I used to because I'm a little older, I've had some money, I had to invest it. I don't have any now, but I used to check my phone 3 or 4 times a day. Yeah, am I up? Am I down? And there's some days I may have made $1,500 on paper, or maybe lost $2,000 or $3,000. Well, that can stress you out. And here's the thing. There's something in our psyche that says our fear of failure is like 3 times the succeeding. So if you have a day where it says you lost $1,000, that's really like losing $3,000. And if you have a day where you made $1,000, that's really like you made $300. So I came up with the stress switch. You only check your investments once a year on your birthday. That's it. Never,
Oh,
ever,
yeah.
any other time, because they go up and down. And okay, and then if you hear the newscast, it's a down day on Wall Street. You know what I mean? Well, the way they even say it, and here's what happens is, say it goes up 500 on Monday, 500 on Tuesday, 500 on Wednesday, 500 on Thursday. It's up 2,000 points for the week. On Friday, it goes down 1,500 points. Well, they'll make a big deal of the Dow dropped 1,500 points today. Well, no, you're still up 500 for the week. But they see how it does. It just stresses you out. The only time you should buy, look at your stocks is if you're going to buy more because you want to know what the price is, or you're going to sell it, or it's your birthday. That is the only time. Otherwise, and especially if it's in a 401k and you're younger, just let it ride. Unless you have some. I mean, there's times I can tell you I've seen the market tank, and I immediately sold, and then it came back the next day, and I just lost a ton of money. And Warren Buffett is one of the most successful investors, and I'm not giving advice, but he just says buy, just let it ride.
Yeah, buy well and let it ride, right?
Yeah, because you can't predict what happens day to day. You just can't. Yeah, and again, I'm not giving investment advice, but I think that advice works for everything. Like you said, people aren't coming to see us or watch us, or just chill out. It's not that important. Or don't try to do things to impress people that hate you. That's another one. I mean, that's what people are doing. They're like, I got to look this certain way for people that hate you. Well, why?
Yeah.
Take care of yourself. You're much more important than their opinion of you.
Yeah. That's my where's the bus? Like those people aren't coming over.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
we won't be seeing them anytime soon. What other switches?
Oh, it's funny. We have 108 in our book.
Yeah.
And
One big one that I do is now that as you become more aware, you can be, working away at what you have to get done. And then 3 things will slip in that are unexpected and put your stress level up through the, immediately, because then you're like, your brain starts to scramble. How am I going to get this all done? And I found if I just take a deep breath and talk to myself and be like, okay, well, I'll do this one now, that one tomorrow, that one Thursday. I've got to the end of the week to finish all of that. That's an immediate stress.
Helps a lot. Helps a lot. Yeah. Oh, that's a good one, Jayne. Here's another one. I know you have a lot of women, but I think they may appreciate this one. We call this one, don't watch sports. I know that sounds crazy. Don't watch sports, because what are sports? Sports is 30 minutes, or 2 or 3 or 4 hours of stress. You're on the edge of your seat, yelling and screaming at the television. Okay. And if they win, that's great. If they lose, you're bummed out for 2 or 3 days. You can't sleep that night. You're sitting there eating unhealthy food, drinking beer. Go out and throw the ball with your kid or something like that instead. I gave it perfect. I live in Tampa, Florida. We had the Super Bowl here. I did not, and I've always been a Tampa Bay Buccaneer fan. I did not watch one of their games this year. I didn't watch their playoffs games, and I didn't watch the Super Bowl. I watched a movie with my wife. Now, what Tampa Bay fan with Tom Brady in the Super Bowl in Tampa doesn't watch the Super Bowl? Because I didn't want to have 3 hours of stress or 4 hours of stress. My health is more important than watching stress. I remember every Sunday afternoon, I used to be start getting nervous around 12 o'clock because the game was going to be on, and I'd be stressed out for 3 hours. Okay. And why? Now I watch the games. I go on YouTube after the game, and like 4 or 5 hours later, they have a recap that's like 11 or 12 minutes long. It's all the great plays, none of the commercials, it's just so I watch the game. If they win, great. I watch the game in 12 minutes. If they lose, I don't watch the game. So that's how I handle it. I have zero stress. I spend great time with my wife, and I don't have to worry about it. Yeah.
Yeah. It frees up a lot of time too, doesn't it?
And it doesn't segregate the family. It's not the men in here yelling and screaming at the TV and the women are in the kitchen talking about this. It's family time. Yeah.
Yeah. I've never
I'll give you.
watched.
I'm sorry.
I've never watched a sports game in my life.
Well,
I just find it eats too much time, and like you say, there's relationships to feed and time to relax if you don't. Anyway, what's your next one?
Don't show me the money, it's called. And that is so often couples are there, or it could be a single person, and they're faced with a choice. I could take this job, or I could take this promotion. It'll give me more money, but it'll give me more stress. So the natural thing is, hey, trade stress for money, right? This is America. It's the can-do attitude. Get all you can all you get, and hopefully someday you get to sit on your can. No, it's you have to think, is that stress worth that money? And after living been on the earth for over 60 years, I could tell you no. I would, well, my wife and I have constantly downsized our house. Um, we were at 2,800 to 1,700. Now we're just over 1,400 square feet, because we don't value the big house. And I'm not saying if you've got a big family, you need a big house, that's fine. But it's like we'd rather lower our lifestyle expenses so we can enjoy life and we don't have to work and use stress for money type of thing. Yeah, don't show me the money. Don't say, okay, and I'll give you an example. My wife's a nurse. She's an RN, which is great because when I was home during the day, my wife's working nights and weekends. That's great for money, but how is that for growing up from our kids? Where's mom? Oh, she's working. We go to a family get together. Where's your wife? Oh, she's working. Oh, at 7:00 at night, my wife's going off to work. Think about it. I mean, before we had kids, it was okay. But the moment we had kids, she should have been home instead of working. There's just no doubt about it. And I know if you have to, you have to. In our situation, we could have just downsized even more so she didn't have to work and our kids would have their mom home. I was great at Mr. Mom. I was awesome at it. Changed a lot of diapers and fed them and stuff. But you know what? You start just going through the motions. You're not doing family time with that. Okay, next feeding has got this. Heat this one up. Do this. Change the diaper. Get them in bed so you can finally, collapse. That's just not how it's supposed to be.
Yeah. And it's, as a woman, it's hard to give up everything to do that. But if you're creative and you're nurturing something that will pay, just slowly pay off as your kids get older, then you can have, both with less stress and be
Absolutely.
there and be there for your kids, right?
You don't have to do the typical 9 to 5 job. There's so many ways, and especially now, work at home things that, maybe it's a project that you could work on when the kids are sleeping or something like that, or a YouTube channel you start, or a podcast, or you write a book, or whatever. You just do interviews. There's just so many other ways of making money now instead of just getting up, going to work, and paying the daycare and all that kind of stuff. If you have to do it, I'm not criticizing anyone, but I know my wife and I, looking back, we think the most important thing human beings do in this world is raise kids, And I would even say the second most important thing is to have a healthy relationship. Actually, no, I would say they're probably equal. Both having a healthy relationship with your partner and in raising kids is more important than any discovery that you have, any money you make, or what business you build, or anything like that. I just think that's how we were designed to live, in a tight, good relationship with our family and our friends, and not be like, I can't make this because I got to do this and do that, and then the guilt of this and the pressure and stuff like that. Again, we're meant to succeed, but not at a cost of relationships and health.
Yeah. And that's one of the things you like to talk about, is how to have a healthy marriage.
Oh, absolutely. And I would say, here's another one. They say that almost all marriages break up because of money problems. And have you heard that before?
Yeah.
I don't think that's true. I think that's a symptom. That's not the cause. The cause is stress. Here's what happens. Usually, a spender marries a nerd. A nerd's the kind of people that they don't like, a saver. So a saver and a spender, because opposite attract, marry each other. And that's good, because in a good situation like that, the saver will help save. And there's times when the spender needs to spend. So you get the best of both worlds. What happens is they get under stress. Now the saver says, well, we got to cut back spending. and the spender's stressed out, well, their go-to is to spend. So they spend more. So now they have money fights, and the saver's saying, we need this. No, you got to stop spending. Well, you can't. You tell them to stop spending, their stress relief valve, their stress trigger is gone. That restriction causes more stress on them, which is going to cause them to yell and scream and go spend all the more. So they pull apart. Okay. So the money is not the issue, it's a symptom. The symptom is the stress. So you take away the stress switches, you turn them off, you eliminate the source of the stress. They're not going to have to go spend money to get to satisfy their spending go to. And the saver's not, some savers, I know people, Jayne, that have millions of dollars and they don't spend money. And the reason is because their form of handling stress is to not spend money. I know that's contrary to some people, but that's just who they are. They're not bad people. And the people who spend money are not bad people. It's just they've got millions of dollars, not just because they don't spend it, just because that gives them pleasure and that gives them comfort. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So what's the solution if you have a relationship with that?
If you're arguing over money, first of all, you marry who you marry. So once you're married, you're kind of stuck. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but that's if someone's contemplating who they're going to get married to, those don't just do a credit check on the person. Like discuss, like, how do you handle? What's your go-to? Is your go-to spending? Is it your go-to doing something healthy? But if you talk about, just the financial part, if you are married, in which most people are, they're in a relationship or with a partner, you need to clearly say, look, the source of you spending is stress. So let's eliminate the stress, and then that person won't have to spend. And then the saver won't have to feel like they're like clamping down on the budget all the more. A budget to a spender is actually like threatening to them. It's very threatening. And a spending to a budget type person is very threatening. So that's what happens.
Yeah. And it's the natural instinct of the father to go out and make money and save, right? And so if the woman is at home without a job, then she has the stress of not having her own income, but also the stress of spending her husband's money. It must create a dynamic that can be quite like a lot of conflict.
It can, but I think I go back to my parents, and like my parents, they got married in 1950. So obviously things were different then, but it was stressful. World War II just ended. My mom was, worked in a hospital as an emergency room nurse and delivering babies. And my dad, was in the Navy and all that kind of stuff, being shot at by the Germans, by U-boats and stuff. That's pretty stressful. That's, but they had a thing where they had an envelope system, and there was no credit cards back then. So basically here's $100 a week for rent. There's $50 for groceries back then, whatever it was. Here's $20 for gas. When that envelope was empty, it was empty, credit cards just make it easy for them to, trap you in and stuff like that. So I think my parents never looked at it as my dad's money. They always looked at it as their money. Just like the two should come together and be one. And I think, if the husband says, I go out, I slave all day and night to make money and you go out and spend it, that's the wrong approach. It's not. No, he's going out and earning the money. But guess what? Especially if there's kids at home, that wife has got the toughest job in the world. That job's harder than any job any guy ever does. I mean, let alone maybe, brain surgery or, working on a high-rise building or something like that. That would make me very nervous. But yeah, I think a woman raising kids has got the hardest job in the world, and it's the most important job. So you got to look at them as co-equals. I mean, you're together as one. And the moment, like, I have a checkbook and you have a checkbook, and if it works for people, great. I just think what happens is when people get stressed, they go into survival mode, and survival mode they naturally become selfish. It's like if there's two life vests on a boat, and there's three people, and the ship is sinking, your natural tendency is going to want one of those life vests. Now, it's just natural tendency. Survival is, so our survival mechanism inside of us is very strong, and for a good reason. So we survive things that are challenges. If someone's faced with a saber-toothed tiger on the savannah, they don't just go like, oh crap, They know they either fight, flight, or freeze. They do something about it. So people who are constantly stressed become very self-centered and very selfish.
Right. So yeah, I remember back to
And
when
not because they're bad people. I just want to say,
no. Yeah.
not because they're bad people,
Yeah.
because they're just anyone who's backed in a corner, like an animal who's backed in a corner, views everything as a threat.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I interrupted you, Jayne.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, I was remembering back to when I had twins and I was at home and I couldn't get, I couldn't do school the way I wanted. And um, I remember having to tame what I considered my ego mind, which was very selfish. Like it just wanted to run and go do what I wanted to do. Right. And my husband handled it so well. He just said that we're a team. This is what I'm going to do now. I really appreciate what you're doing now. It's all going to work out. And that really calmed me that I was part of a team, that team mentality.
Yeah, they say there's no I in team.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, you had a great husband, and he's very balanced. Sounds like, and you sound like, even though you might have been under a little bit of like stress, then it sounds like you're still a very grounded type person. So you could receive that.
Yeah, and I could recognize what I was doing, how I was feeling. Right, I was feeling backed into that corner. Right.
Right. Yeah.
But brilliant point to make. Love it. So, is there anything you could leave our listeners with, maybe a couple extra tips, and then share how they can get hold of you and what your book, and if they wanted to reach out to you, how they could find you?
Sure. Thank you. I appreciate it. Here's the thing. We were not designed to be a human pinball. We're not designed to be like, wake up in the morning, hit the ground running, go, 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 until you drop into bed at night, and then you realize like 60, 70, 80 years later, like the whole life was a blur and you never really got to have a good relationship with the most important people around you. Maybe you made some money, maybe you have some things to show for it, but really, is that important? So we were designed to live a life, I believe, of love, joy, peace, so you can have a sound mind. They all go together. Okay. You really can't have one without the other. And if that is your standard, not being stressed out, but love, joy, peace, so you can have a sound mind. If that's your standard, then okay, what in my life is keeping me from that standard of love, joy, peace, and sound mind? Is it this job? Is it this relationship? Is it the food I'm eating? Is it because, maybe I need to like turn the temperature down in the house or up in the house because it's not comfortable. I'm trying to be too cheap type thing. It could be whatever people have that's stressing them out. And they could get our book. It's called Stress-Free You. It's on Amazon. It's in Kindle version, which means you don't have to have a Kindle app. You can just download the Kindle app and get it on your phone. It's like $3.49 for that. It's $15, I think, paperback. And it's part of the Kindle Unlimited program. So if you subscribe to that, you can actually read our book for free. So we have 108 stress switches in the book, and you could get that, and I hope that helps you. Or take a piece of paper and just write down all the things that are stressing you out. Just be honest. And maybe you need your spouse to help you, because sometimes they're a window into your soul, and they can see, more into you than what we see for ourselves. And then lastly, eliminate all sources of stress. It's like stress relief is great, but stress relief is not the solution. Stress relief is, like we say, it's like trying to drain a cell phone battery while it's still plugged in. It's going to take some off, but it's still coming in. So you need to eliminate the source of the stress, turn off your stress switches, and then stress relief will make a difference. And they can reach us at stressfreeyou.net. And we do a Stress Free You podcast. It's everywhere you get podcasts. And we do a full version on Tuesday, and every Thursday and Sunday we come out what's called the Stress-Free Minute. It's a 1-minute little quickie tidbit podcast. But we have a lot of fun. So that helps people too. And I thank you so much for being on your show and all the time you've given me.
Brilliant, Richard. Yeah. And I think your book would be brilliant, because just to be aware is the number one step, and then some creative choices.
Yeah. Awareness is, like you you started the whole thing. Awareness is key, because if you don't know you have the problem, you can't address it.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much for coming today.
And I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
And for everyone out there, don't forget, don't give away your power to anyone else. Be the creator of your own life. Spiral up, spiral out.